Welcome to AstroChat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. The three of us are actually all here at one time. The AstroChat podcast is in session, so you're being joined by myself, Kimberly Williams, my cohorts, Anne Sundell and Monica Anna. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. We are talking eclipses today. We are specifically going to be talking about the Scorpio eclipse that is happening this week. Quick timestamp for you. It is happening on Friday, May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Here in Central Time Zone, it'll be about 12:34 in the afternoon. Across the pond in the UK, 6:34, give or take a minute or two, depending on how your charts are set up. We were doing that earlier. We were having all of our different computers giving us a couple minutes apart, probably something in the settings. And then over in Finland, that'd be 8:34 p.m. So feel free to look it up if you're not living in one of those spots, see where it's happening for you. We'll pull up the chart in just a few minutes. If you haven't joined us before, then welcome. We are the AstroChat Podcast, 3 astrologers from 3 different countries, 3 different points of view, 3 kinds of astrology. We are so happy that you're going to be part of this discussion. A couple of housekeeping things here. I'm going to give you a heads up on some things that are happening. We like to look at the transits for a 2-week period from lunation to lunation, new moon to full moon to new moon. And so we're looking at what's happening May 5th through May 19th of this month. And there's just not enough time to talk about everything. We're going to be focusing primarily on the eclipse and what's happening with that full moon. But, you might be interested to look at your own chart and see what's happening with that lovely Mercury retrograde. Started back on April 21st and it's going until May 14th. So that might be significant for you. We also are going to see Jupiter hit that 29 degrees of Aries. And if you listen to our last podcast, you know that we had an eclipse at 29 Aries, so that could be significant. That's going to be on May 17th. And the day after, on May 18th, Jupiter will ingress into Taurus. We'll probably come back and revisit that in our next episode. And we've also got Venus making her ingress into Cancer in just a few days on May 7th. So I doubt we'll have time to talk about them, but those might be things of interest to you. And feel free, as always, to put your comments in the comment section below. We are recording today almost live. It is going to be just us going without editing, so we can get this uploaded quick and fast for you. And at some point in the next 24 hours, this will be out there and we will be hopping on to check the comments and talk with y'all, give some feedback back and forth. So I hope you enjoy us being raw, live-ish, messy, and as Monica put it, talking about the big soup of the eclipse. Anne, I think you're starting us off with Sabian symbols.
Thank you. It's great to be here with everybody present at the same time again, like before. And yes, I'm talking about the Sabian symbol, and this symbol is said to be a bit of a mystical one this time. We have 15 degrees of Scorpio, and the symbol is children playing around 5 mounds of sand. And the number 5 is important here because it's also a very mystical number, referring to the pentagram, referring to higher knowledge, to a higher level. And it's something about this that the symbol is about this time, that at what level are we operating? Are we still doing the child play, or are we actually taking our potentials and maybe our hidden potentials to a higher level? and what are the inner things that we might not recognize that we are having. The brighter side of life, the creative process, we can use and how we can use it. And this connects us to a very powerful full moon that we have, and in Scorpio this time. So it's quite deep symbolic meaning of this symbol, I think.
I mean, it's interesting that it's obviously the symbol within the Scorpio archetype. Scorpio that likes to hide, that it's fairly often it's fairly serious archetype that protect itself, and suddenly we have the symbol of children at play. I mean, this is something you would associate with Leo, with Gemini, but not necessarily with the Scorpio. So I think there is an interesting reflection there on what do we need to, how does life harden us to the point that we need to, raise those walls and that moat and put that dragon before anyone can reach, us and in our true vulnerable state. And what is it about all those walls that we put that we can maybe break them, maybe let go of them, and revive that childlike play and become vulnerable. There's so much going on now around vulnerability and how we can show up in our authentic self, and we speak about it on the podcast as well. And as a Scorpio rising, I can say it's all very well, but we also need to have boundaries. We all also need to tap into that intuition that Scorpio has around people, that we know who to actually let within our inner circle and be vulnerable with, and who maybe needs to stay on the outskirts of that circle, because we also need to protect ourselves. There is a difference between building the walls and actually separating ourselves from the world and building the walls for protection. So which one is it? With some of them we might have to let them go. And as I said, the full moon on Friday, the eclipse, is in Scorpio. Scorpio is very much an intense obsessive sign. This is the archetype of things hidden, the skeleton hidden in a cupboard, the underground, the underworld, intensity, obsession, things that are taboo for you, for the culture that you grow up, for the family that you grew up. What is it that it's not spoken about, or what is it within your life that you are not or you're conditioned not to talk about, or not to be open about, and have things hidden? I mean, it doesn't have to be anything, to make you blush. In some cultures, aggression, it's frowned upon. Aggression or healthy expression of aggression can be a taboo. In some cultures, speaking about your sexuality may be a taboo, but in some cultures, talking about music can be taboo. There are different layers, depending on where we grow up, in which culture or religion or country. But what is it for you that is hidden, that is taboo? And what is it about that needs to be hidden? Sometimes there are, legitimate reasons why we, have things hidden. I mean, no one's walking with, tattoo on their forehead of their social security number, right? There is a reason for keeping that hidden. But what is it that we keep hidden? That should be actually let go of, that fear around having that in the light. We need to let go of that fear. I'll stop here, and I'm interested what you guys have to say about the full moon in Scorpio.
Anna's our resident Scorpio. Do you want to tag in on that?
Well, I think that the Scorpio moon in general has a bit of bad rap around it. It's like very intense, it's very dark. It's a lot of feelings, and some of them might be potentially also destructive. I mean, Scorpio is the sign that can also hit themselves a lot with all those feelings. Also, what's hidden or blocked or denied that we don't want to get up to acknowledge. that's associated with Scorpio. I actually read an article on the full moon that was done like a scientific study on people's emotions related to that on the full moon, and that people need more mental health services during full moon. I mean, this is also something I thought was very interesting when talking about astrology, that actually also we're looking into this, what's happening around the moon and sun cycle, and they are important, and especially with an intense moon like Scorpio. I mean, the feelings can be very intense, or we can choose to, as many times with Scorpio, we don't show the feelings, we lock them in, we freeze, we don't respond at all, and that's also very bad. So yeah, it's complicated moon. I think that somebody said that Scorpio feelings are like a deep cave or something like that.
Ooh, I like that. Deep cave. Yeah. I feel like I overuse the word intensity whenever I talk Scorpio, but like it's a full moon in Scorpio, so there's intensity. I think a lot of the emotions that both of y'all have referenced, it's not just the current ones, but it's also those deep-seated emotions, the emotions that have been buried coming up. I think about recently I have been working with the stone peridot, and peridot actually is not from the Earth's crust deep down. It is in magma, and it is in those upper layers of the Earth's crust. Or I'm obviously not a meteorologist, but it's more of an upper, and it's brought to the surface through volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. And that's what I feel like with this, that although we might be dealing with situations that can be frustrating or things that can feel very emotional in the moment. This morning I was dealing with computer issues. Thank you, Mercury retrograde. That I was having really exacerbated emotional response to, but that response wasn't about the situation. It was a projection of what's buried, what's deeper, what's going on, that's coming up. So I think just being aware that whatever we feel, we have the right to those feelings, but also recognizing there might be some other deeper, more buried feelings coming to the surface to be released that's getting kind of meshed in. So not everything that we're feeling right now is about the right now. It's okay. It's okay to feel what we feel, whether that emotional response feels that it is equal to the stimuli or not. And I think that's important because it is a full moon, even though it's an eclipse, which we're going to talk about in a moment, it is a full moon. And so we've talked many times about full moons are a time of release. Bring it up, let it out. Breathe and let it go. But we can't let it go if we don't first bring it up and feel it. I also want to just kind of tag on, as you both were talking about things being hidden. Another side, especially with Scorpio, is that a Scorpio eclipse and full moon energy, sometimes what's hidden is really cool and juicy. Like this is the hidden, the deep mysteries, the psychic skills and gifts, the visions that come to us in our dreams that aren't so clear and we have to try and interpret. Suddenly our psychic ESP vibes are maybe a little bit stronger. So anything around that, which can be really exciting, can also be super strong right now. And I'll just wrap up by saying, going back to what you said, Anne, about the Sabian symbol, it just instantly made me think about the opposite sign of Taurus and how Taurus energy, excuse me, where the sun is right now during this full moon, the sun is in Taurus saying, play like a child. When we were children, we could get in the mud, we could get real earthy. Sorry, guys, it's raw and live. We could get real earthy. We could make mud pies, before society taught us the scorpionic taboos of what is right and wrong. And so perhaps there's something here too about letting ourselves let go of that taboo concept of right and wrong and doing what feels right and seeing where that might lead. I don't know, random thoughts.
I mean, I love when we're talking about emotions and water. Every time I think about 3 water signs, the Pisces, the Cancer, Scorpio, those are the water signs. those are the archetypes that can easily overwhelm us. Those are the kind of tsunami waves of emotions that come and overwhelms us. But when I think about Scorpio water for me is the iceberg. So you literally see the tip of the emotional life of Scorpio archetype above the water, and you see the whole world that is beneath the surface, right? So that intensity is sometimes very well hidden. As an observer, you might not see what a deep and rich life, internal life your Scorpio friend has, because they keep everything underneath the surface. And again, there is no judgment. Some people like to be an extroverted and they live life, outside, and some people are very introverted. They want that richness within. However, with that iceberg, we're keeping things within. We're running into the Titanic story. So is the, other stuff that you have hidden underneath, are they because you just enjoy, you're naturally introverted person, you just enjoy that internal world? Or is it because you're pushing them down? Those are the emotions, the fears, the phobias, the taboos that you're pushing down into your subconscious and repressing them instead of being able to express them. And at some point, your lifeboat will literally crush, into them, and they'll come to the surface. So for the full moon in Scorpio, for me, those are the things that sometimes we're trying to push down, and they're coming up to the surface, both personally for us, as well as in society. I mean, we're linking the whole Me Too movement, and the kind of clarity around taboo in Hollywood, especially, and the taboo around assault, sexual assault, which is very Scorpio, actually to that to those two signs, Scorpio and Taurus as well. So those are the themes that can come up again on a world scale, but also for you personally. What is it that you are afraid to face, afraid to talk to? You've been conditioned again by people around you that it's not okay to talk about it. And what are you pushing down that suddenly at the full moon it erupts, like that volcano that Kimberly was talking about, like that volcano, and overwhelms you and knocks you down? So Scorpio, we didn't touch on that, and Scorpio is very transformative, but it's very destructive sign. I love that you brought the volcano image, because Scorpio is the archetype that needs to burn and literally like ripped everything sometimes to pieces before we can create something new. I think it was one of the astrologers that was talking about her kitchen transformation, and linking it to Pluto Scorpio kind of archetype. How it's beautiful when you're designing a new house or new kitchen, or you're trying to transform your shed. It's all about the interior design and the colors and the fabric. But what we forget, that before that can happen, you need to rip everything out. All the pipes, all the, potentially rewiring. You have to rip that all out. And this is Scorpio. So at the full moon, one, we can crush into things that we're trying to push that back hidden. Think about how much energy you're actually wasting at keeping things underneath the surface. If you ever played with any floating device in water and you're trying to put it down, you know that it will come back up, and it takes a lot of energy to hold like a ball or anything floating, underneath the surface. This is Scorpio. It's whatever we're keeping, it will come up with even stronger force.
You froze up there, hon. You want to repeat
what is it that you can transform that doesn't distract you? Sorry,
you froze up there. You want to repeat that in case it didn't make it to the recording?
Am I frozen now?
No, now you're good.
No? Okay. Thank you, Mercury, for allowing us to do that. We knew we were going to have some snafus with god of communication, going backwards a little bit. So yeah, what I was saying, if you were playing at any point, you know, in a pool or sea, you know, with a flotation device, with a ball, and you were trying to keep that ball underneath the surface, you know, it takes energy to do that. And the moment you let go slightly, it just shoots up back in the air. So this is kind of Scorpio. Whatever we're trying to hid underneath the surface, it takes our life energy. Scorpio is ruled by Mars, which really represents our life energy. So whatever we're trying to keep hidden, it takes energy to keep it hidden, to keep it protected, to keep it, you know, away from the prying eyes. That is our life energy that goes into that. How much energy would you have for that playful, jumping around the 5 mounts if you didn't have to do that? So what is it around this full moon that, you know, is destructive to you that you can let go of, and you can transform that destructiveness or destructive force into a force of transformation?
Yeah, and transformation being the key word. You know, we've talked a lot, Monica, you and I, about how people say transformation and oh, it's the pretty butterfly. And yes, butterflies are symbols of transformation, but it's the journey that that organism went through to become the butterfly that was the transformation. It's the caterpillar dying and becoming goo. It's that goo becoming a chrysalis and forcing it, eating its way and forcing its way and feeling that push as it's reborn, as you know, all that energy is pushed back into the wings so that it can fly. It is not an easy process. And so
Yeah.
I'm with you. It's sort of that, well, what needs to die off? What do we need to release? What do we need to surrender? And if there's lies or secrets that we've been expending energy to keep, then during a full moon in Scorpio, and especially an eclipse, get prepared for some of that to be revealed, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the chart if now's a good time.
Yeah.
Bear with me, folks, while I
So as you actually bring up the chart, I'm going to start on eclipse, because what you just said about, you know, that purging and that releasing, it's actually what we're seeing now on a Friday. It's actually end of an eclipse season. So this is the last eclipse in Scorpio, and then we have another one in October 25th, eclipse in Taurus, and those two are the last one from the Taurus and Scorpio pair that we will be seeing. So those two closing the whole cycle that started in November 2021. So again, as we're talking about releasing it, purging, and, you know, looking at what can you let go of, it would be useful, and that's the tip for this episode from me, would be useful to look at what happened in November 2021. I think it was 19 November, and then 30th of April 2022, and then we had another one in I think they had another one in October. So what happened over this time around those themes of Taurus and Scorpio? So the themes of wealth and power and transformation and standing up to power and self-worth and whatever all, you know, other keywords we can find for Taurus and Scorpio. What is it around those themes that came up for you over the last few months that you need to close now? So what is it around that cycle that this eclipse and the one in October will close and will say goodbye to for the next 9 years? And if you want to think back further, the same cycle was 2013, 2014, and further back it was 2003 and 2004 that we had those eclipses. So what is it around those years, and especially the last few months, that you need to revisit and reflect? And probably Mercury retrograde will really help with that.
Yeah. And for those of us a little bit older, we also had this cycle happen back in 1994 and 95. And speaking about cycles, Anne, didn't you have some info to share with us about the Saros cycle? I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep deferring to you, but it just now I'm like, oh, I want to know more about the Saros cycle. And you're the expert I go to on that.
I'm not the expert on cycles, Sarah's cycle. Expert on that would be Bernadette Brady. That astrologer she's actually an expert, and it's quite complicated with the Sarah's cycles. There are many cycles, and we have about 40 active cycles at the same time. But what's interesting with the cycles are, and this moon cycle is number 141. It started 1608 in the sign of Pisces, and it's going to end 2004, 192. So we are still not in the end of it. We are still like in the first half of it. The cycles are a bit like family, the solar cycles. There are certain numbers for eclipses, and they all have certain characteristics, or you can say that they have certain dynamics. Usually these are more stronger connected to the sun, the solar cycles, the solar cycles than the lunar. So the lunar are a bit more secondary, also in astrology. But with this cycle, it might be especially important cycle for people that were born the years that this cycle has been occurring before. And the last time it has been occurring is 2005, and the times you were saying, the years you were referring to, are also the years that we have this cycle occurring before. So if you are born a year where you had this cycle close to your birth date, before your birth, then the same repeating sort of cycle might be a very important year for you, and it might include a new direction in life. And that I've seen also very often with clients, that when there's the same sort of cycle as close to birth, then they will also be more searching for the direction, a feeling that now bigger changes gonna happen. When I was looking at this 141 cycle historically, it wasn't really anything that could be seen as reoccurring every time with 141. It was more like maybe, well, the first cycle that year, 1608, Galileo found the telescope, for example, but then also Uranus was in Gemini. So I think that was more about that. So it's maybe not so much about the outer world, what's happening there with the lunar solar cycle. It's more about the inner and emotional side of it. Like I feel also with lunar eclipses, that it's more about the inner world and not that much about concrete happenings as we have with solar. I'm dressed very wrong for a lunar cycle. You should have dark clothes according to some astrologer, and strengthen the lunar energy in that way too. So, but the solar cycles are especially interesting if you have the same cycle now as the year you were born. Then it would be maybe a more important lunar cycle for you.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love the idea of, wearing the dark clouds and protecting the energy. Not sure about dark clouds because I don't think I actually have anything dark in my wardrobe. But I like the idea of protecting your lunar energy or your soul energy. And I think I subscribe to that. And I know that we weren't planning on talking about it, but I think it's a lovely question to ask now. How do you guys feel about eclipses, and how do you actually attend to them? Because there's so many things out there in the internet world, some people doing a full-blown ritual, some people are complete opposite. I have to say, for me, when it comes to full moon or new moon eclipse, those are the times when I do not do anything active, as in I do not actively put intentions, actively do rituals, actively do anything. those are the times when I spend time protecting my energy, reflecting, going within. Those are the times for me when the light, so to speak, our luminaries are not visible. The light is, so to speak, disappearing from the world in a metaphorical sense. So I go within to find my light, to reflect on that. And yeah, and I'm not actively actually doing any ceremonies. How about you?
I'm always betwixt and between, I got Gemini rising. I'm always like of two minds when it comes to an eclipse. I used to be prior to learning and becoming an astrologer. I used to be, yay, it's an eclipse, time for ritual, time for ceremony, let's travel, let's do things. And then I started paying attention to not every eclipse was there a problem, but often there was a problem. And if there was a problem, it was big and it was huge and it was the thing I didn't see coming that just got me between the eyes. And there were several times with eclipses where there were health issues and health challenges. And since then, I'm a little more hesitant. I do feel that with the lunar eclipses, especially, and if there are any quincunxes, which we do have, right? In this chart, we didn't really give the details, but for those who are listening, in this eclipse, the sun and the moon are at 14 degrees 58 minutes of their respective signs. So the moon in Scorpio, sun in Taurus, and that moon is making a quincunx to Chiron, the wounded healer, at 17 degrees of Aries. So to me, that is very much a stop and pay attention. There could be some health problem kind of aspect. That always makes me wake up, pay attention. And with a lunar eclipse, I feel that it is much more about the body than the solar eclipses, which is often about what I'm doing in the world. And I agree totally with what Anne was saying, that for me, a lunar eclipse is very much about that personal. So I don't do a lot of traveling if I can at all avoid it during the lunar eclipse. I try to make sure I travel before, after, and I'm staying put during it if I must travel. Wider window. I try to be aware that during the eclipse season, 18 degrees before and after, the sun is, talking to, while those nodes are under the beams of the sun, as it were. I try to be a little more cautious about, there could be things I'm not seeing. I don't make quick decisions because something's hidden from view. And what was the other thing I was going to say? It just went right out of my head. Come back. Oh, and I do ritual, but I make it very much about what I need to receive. I feel like an eclipse is a great time for me to drop my guard, to get out of my mind, my linear self, which can be really strong, and get into that unconscious. And it might just be, I'm doing a tarot reading to see what comes. It might be, I'm taking a bath and opening myself up to some good dreams. Like, I give up control. I feel like during the eclipse, the universe has control. I am a recipient and I'm willing to receive, and I don't try to understand everything in the moment. Sometimes I need to receive, and post eclipse is when I might have, especially if an eclipse is happening with a Mercury retrograde, like now, it's post eclipse that I might have the insight and the revelations that follow. Yeah. What about you, Anne? How are you working with eclipses?
Well, I don't do rituals. I'm not having rituals. I with the moon, I try to rest and preserve energy. I try to eat dark foods because that's also associated with the moon. Like blueberries in Finland. I mean, that's a national anthem food almost. And then I also try with this Scorpio moon to look at those feelings that might be hidden. Go with the feeling when you know it can be intense. Then you know that you can also like let feelings come and go, and see what might be something that you haven't thought about in this way. How can you transform this? What might this be a message about? This is also a moon that's going to be in my 12th house, so it might come up through dreams too. So it will be interesting to see, to observe what's gonna be the main themes.
I feel like the eclipses are in a way, they're the crossroads, that the universe bringing us to a crossroads, and we might think that we're going one direction, and then the eclipse happen and we're put on a different path that we haven't seen coming, because we thought we're on a straight path, and then there's this crossroad. And if I can go to a matrix, this is the kind of glitch in a system. This is where the red woman passes you in the system, and that the code is updated. So this is the eclipses for me, and I agree with both of you. This is the time when I listen to the universe, of what the universe needs from me, instead of me putting my intention and my affirmations and my my wishes to the universe. So it's the kind of like communication has to go both ways, right? Talking about this eclipse and bringing some of the aspects, Kimberly, you mentioned that we have obviously anything within 18 degrees from the sun. It's close to the sun. We have Uranus and Mercury being very close to the sun on this eclipse, and two rulers actually of this eclipse involved as well. So Pluto, the modern ruler of this eclipse, is at 0 degrees Aquarius, and it's squaring the nodes, the nodal axis. And we have Mars in Cancer as well, and Mars is sextiling the south node, sextiling the Uranus
sun and the moon, yeah.
and the sun, and trining the moon. So yeah, what do you guys make of that?
Well, and I also going to throw in there too that Pluto, which is at 0 degrees of Aquarius, it's its first time stationing. It only just recently went into Aquarius. So this is its first stationary retrograde, which I feel like whenever a planet is stationed, it is speaking very loudly, like put an exclamation point behind whatever it has to say. So I feel like there's an energy about wake up and pay attention to what's going on with within our being, within ourselves, within our bodies, within our emotional world, within our psyche. What is going on? And we've said this over and over and over, but I'm going to say it one more time because this is our last eclipse in Scorpio for near 8 to 9 years. So last time I'm going to say it. What is it that we are afraid of letting go? What is it what is the fear about something dying off? The fear, the death of Scorpio. And why do I think I need it, Taurus? Why do I think I need that resource? What is the belief system that I need that safety net? And I just feel like this is the message that we've been getting pummeled with for the last almost 2 years, with this energy of these eclipses hitting that Scorpio Taurus axis.
I can't hear you, Kimberly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
We can.
Oh, sorry.
So
I got two animated.
Again, it's awesome because it just shows how Mercury plays the trick. So this is the raw, unedited version of our podcast.
That's right.
You can guys see for yourself how likely it is to have, uninterrupted recording when the Mercury is in retrograde.
Yeah, and that retrograde happened while it was conjunct Uranus. Just saying, like, extra fodder. But I was just saying, like, to me, it's just another key moment about waking up and realizing that we're not, if you feel like there's an area of life, look at your chart natally, where do you have the Scorpio Taurus axis happening? Where are we not moving forward in that area of life? Well, if we're not moving forward the way we want, what is it that we have not let die off? What is the fear of thinking I need blank? What is going on? And we need to let it go. And I just feel like with this one, having Mercury and Uranus, on either side of that sun, the sun is sandwiched in between. It's like we really have to pay attention to our thinking. What is the story we are telling ourselves? What is the story we've made up and believe? And what is the shock that we need to disrupt and dismantle and break that down?
Yeah.
When I'm thinking about the ruler, yeah, I agree too. I was going just to say something about the rulers.
Yeah.
When I think about Pluto as the ruler of Scorpio, Mars as the ruler, I think of Mars more like expression of anger, and Pluto is more the expression of resentment. And Mars in Cancer, that's not so easy to express, but with a positive angle to Saturn, that's a very karmic aspect that we use in karmic astrology as a like special aspect. So through that, I think that there might be a better chance of getting those emotions out, or understanding them or feeling them with that combination. With Pluto stationing, Pluto stations about 4 to 7 days each time. And I think this one was maybe 5 days. And the stationing, I think the Pluto is more, it's more an expression of like mythology of Hades, the death place, that the hidden place. Even like Kimberly said, that the things that are still somehow hunting us, that are not solved for some reason, because we wanna hold on to it, or we are feeling resentment or guilt, or we can't let them go, maybe because it suits us also to not let them go. Then this period might be a reminder of that, before we can enter again into Aquarius and have a new era with Pluto.
It does feel like this whole chart for the eclipse is looking back. It's looking to the past. You know, we have Mars, the ruler of the eclipse, in Cancer. So it's very much about the ancestral past for me. You know, what happened about my family and family conditioning. What have I received, so to speak, from my ancestors, literally through my genes, but also, you know, through the psyche, right? What is it, the beliefs, the structures, you know, anything that kind of they ingrain in me. And then we have Pluto, again looking backwards. You know, Pluto will be moving back. It's stopped and it's already looking, you know, where it's going to go. When it started its retrograde motion, and it's squaring the node. So again, it's that kind of tense conversation with the past south node and the future north node, if you will. That's you know, simplifying things. But it's like, what do we have in that underworld, in the Hades, in our own, I'm going to be very dramatic now, but in our own personal hell, that it's preventing us from moving forward. It's preventing us from, you know, reaching to our gifts from the past and moving forward to the future. I mean, with the nodal axis, we can look at it in two different ways. We can look at it as a south node, you know, our karma and all the sins that we acquired dragging us down, and that future of north node being really scary, and, you know, moving towards that north node might feel like too much of a hard work. Or we can look at this nodal axis as, you know, all the gifts and wisdom that we acquired over, you know, over lifetimes, and then moving forward to something that we can bring our own personal stamp, our own personal story into the future. And then Pluto stops there and have that conversation. It's like, okay, what is it about your personal struggle, personal hell, if you will, that you need to release, that you need to overcome, to balance that nodal axis? And at the same time, we have Mercury, the only god that could go between heaven and hell, right? That could travel willingly, is so close to the sun and to Uranus, the god of breakthrough, karmic breakthroughs, the, you know, the electricity, the fire in us. So I feel like there's something again around looking back into the past. Mercury is still retrograde, looking back into the past, but in order to release ourselves from the karmic burden, release ourselves from the ghosts of the past that we keep in our cupboard, you know, the skeleton that we keep in our cupboard, that keep us frozen in place, frozen in motion. Again, frozen is very much a for me, when I think about Scorpio, you know, that frozen water, we're freeze in the moment. So I think with that Mercury Uranus on the sun on the North Node, there's something around breakthroughs. There's something about that kind of lightning thing, you know, but it is linked to the past. I personally would think, you know, maybe not necessarily on the eclipse day, but having reflection or journaling or actual regression therapy might be really helpful.
Or pulling out your Astro Luna journal and putting some information in that book about what's going on would be great for later on for you to look back to.
True. So true. A little plug-in, personal plug-in.
It's a little plug. If you haven't already gotten Monica's book, I highly recommend it. It's great.
Thank you.
I totally agree with that. And I feel like this is an opportunity for that aha moment, that breakthrough, that realization, that seeing, like the things that hold us back, the family conditioning we've endured, the fears that have become the ghosts that haunt us. A lot of times we know how that feels, but we don't know what it is. It's not like I can give a name to it. It's much more unconscious. It's much more, it's the feeling of dread, but I don't know why. You know, it's the things we don't want to look at. And I feel like all that's rising up. It's like Inanna leaving the underworld, coming back for those who like to work with mythology. You know, she goes through the gates, she goes into the underworld, she takes off all of the things of power, gets down there, meets her sister Ereshkigal, and is killed and dead and hangs and has to let everything die off of who she was. And then she's resurrected and she comes back and she takes all these tools of power back on, but with a new attitude. And then she's at the gate to that cave, ready to return. And there's that moment of seeing the civilization and knowing I'm not going back the same person. I can't be the same person. Something about what I believed or disbelieved is now gone. And I have to now act and be this different person. And that means things will shift. And sometimes it'll be good and sometimes it'll be painful. And that's what this feels like to me. All this water, we've mentioned it, but I'm going to pull it together here. Saturn is in Pisces, making harmonious aspects to the nodes. Mars, the ancient ruler of Scorpio, is in Cancer, is in her fall, but making harmonious aspects to the luminaries, making a trine to Neptune, which is also in Pisces. It is a full moon eclipse in Scorpio. Water, water, water everywhere. So the emotions are strong, but also means that everything that's been crystallized in that iceberg under the layers that maybe we haven't seen for ourselves, it now can come up. There can be that breakthrough. And then you've got Uranus and Mercury saddling the sun, saying, I can now use my mind. I can have the aha. I can suddenly see, because they're on the sun, right? I can now see what I didn't see before. So even though I may not understand the whys and the whos and the whats, because, hey, everything under the beams is a little like clouded, but I can see it. I can have the aha moment of this is what's been holding me back. This is what I'm still believing. This is the conditioning I haven't quite broken through. So now we can, because now we know. Okay. Thanks for letting me get on that soapbox.
It's a nice box.
So, any other thoughts about our lovely eclipse full moon in Scorpio chart? Shall we move into tips?
Yeah, I want to say there's so many thoughts, but if we were to go down that route, we'll be here for another 3 hours. So yeah, I'm happy to move to the tips.
Yeah.
And I can start us off actually.
Go ahead.
So like I mentioned earlier, I think this is an end of a cycle. So it's the last of the Scorpio eclipses for the next 9 years. And in October, we have the last of the Taurus eclipses. And we're moving to completely, obviously, new cycle. So it's good to reflect on what is coming to an end. What are those two eclipses going to finish and close for me? So have a look at the time in your life from November, 19th of November 2021, and what themes around those two archetypes were coming up. If you're familiar with your chart, have a look at where the Scorpio and Taurus is in your chart, because those will be the themes around the areas of life, not just the archetypes, but also the areas of life, whether it's home and a career, whether it's personal and relationship. So have a look at that and reflect and go back, to the previous years that we've mentioned. 2013, 2014, that was another cycle in Taurus Scorpio. 2003, 2004, and then a 1994, 1995, if I remember correctly. So reflection on this eclipse, especially on this Scorpio eclipse, around what do you need to let go of and close, might be super beneficial to you. And another little tip is Mercury and Uranus is linked to that eclipse. So anything electronic, including, anything mobile, electronic, laptops, mobile phones, cars, our cars are loaded with electronic stuff these days, with loads of software. Anything like that might not be the best idea to get involved with at this moment in time. And I'll try to take the same tip for myself. So, pause it, think about it, reflect on it. Don't make any purchases or signing any contracts in really kind of Uranian haphazard quick way, because that might come back to you the moment Mercury will go direct. You might realize that actually during the eclipse or around the eclipse, you signed a contract and you didn't read it through, and suddenly something came to the light, was brought up to the light that was earlier in the shadows. So those are the two tips from me.
Okay, I'll
Do you
jump
want to
in.
go, Kimberly?
Sure, I'll jump in. So I have two, because I'm taking one from Anne, and I hope it's not your tip and trick, but what you said earlier about wearing dark colors and eating dark food, I am like going to start doing that as soon as we get off. I love when the sun is in Taurus every year. I love trying to do anything that allows us to embody the energies that are happening. I just feel like that is the time to really make it, put it here, put it in my body, put it on my body. So I'm taking that from you and adopting it and doing that starting now. And then the other one is to think about giving yourself permission to just pause, to float. Let this be, if anyone has ever gone and done the eye floats where, they put you in the little cocoon and it's all a salinated water and you just relax and float and you don't have to do anything. This is a good time to float, because emotions are going to make us feel like I must do something now. I so want it, or I don't like this feeling. I must move away from it. But the planet of action, Mars, is not well placed. We didn't mention she's also out of bounds, as well as being in the sign of her fall. So this is not the time necessarily for action. Mercury's retrograde. It's an eclipse, which means not everything we can see. So from now until May 14th, when Mercury goes direct, might be a really good time to just be receiving whatever information comes in. Make a note, make a list, be aware, take it in, and just allow yourself to float in that and think in a little bit of time what you want to then do with it, taking action later. Mars will be coming out of bounds the end of the month, so we'll have lots of time to think more clearly as Mercury goes direct and take action as Mars comes back into bounds. Those are my two.
I haven't calculated if this is one or two or what they are actually, but I think about working with karmic issues, because Scorpio moon south node eclipse, it's a lot about old stuff that might, even if you believe in stuff like that, be coming from some other lifetime or time than we're living right now. And with karma, I think that it's really important with motives. What is the underlying motive for what I'm doing? And with old things that might come up, or where we blame ourselves, or grudges we have for things that happened, it might be good to think about like what was my motive, and what's my motive for what I want to do right now. Because Pluto is stationing, sometimes it might be a good thing, for a powerful thing for the power and for directing the goals for the future, not taking action, but thinking about what's my motive for what I want to do, and what do I really want to do, and why do I want to do it. So this was my I don't know, this was my tip.
Love it. All right. So with that in mind, we will be posting this shortly, and hopefully you'll have time to review some of this before the eclipse happens, and check back in, comment, tell us your thoughts, how this is feeling for you. And we three will be over the next 2 days checking in, commenting back, letting you know our thoughts, and see you all on the other side of the eclipse.
See you on the other side.
See you.
Thank you for joining us in this week's AstroChat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. AstroChat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support AstroChat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.